It began as a celebration. The Charn called it a renewal, a return to the purity of their ancestors. Noble families and corporate magnates arrived in glistening skimmers, their hulls spreading iridescent wakes over the atmosphere of a green world at the edge of the Velis expanse. The air above the designated reserve shimmered with drones, each one a lens, each lens an eye, each eye feeding a paying audience scattered across 100 systems. In the observation lounge of his personal cruiser, Vesgarden tilted a crystal of amber liquor toward the nearest screen and watched himself from a dozen angles at once. He studied the already edited feed, the shot of his helm cresting over a rise, the slow zoom on the set of his mandibles when he smiled, the artful panning across the row of polished skulls along the bulkhead behind him. The skulls were small. They always were. That was the point. "Audio on," he said. His ship obeyed, letting in the roar of the crowd on the landing field below. Charn voices trilling and deep. The frantic thought stream of remote viewers flickered through the underlays. Anticipation, hunger, desire for novelty. There had not been a legal hunt like this in generations. Ves could taste their excitement and behind it, their ignorance. They had no idea what it had cost to push the legislation through the Dominion's lawworks, the bribery, the threats, the quiet disappearances. Prefect Malak had done his part in the capital. Vesk had done his in the shadows. Now both would feast. On the main screen, a commentator from one of the hunt networks gestured toward the forest reserve. "Today, for the first time under the new edicts," the commentator declaimed, "the Dominion honors its right to regulate surplus biomass. These are not citizens. They are refugees, wild stock from failed worlds. Their lives are assigned no legal continuity. They exist for our renewal." The camera cut to a live drone feed. In the undercanopy, in a tangle of thick, purple-veined trees and luminous moss, 5 Silari children stumbled through ferns taller than their shoulders. The Silari were waterborne, their skin a soft sheen of pale turquoise beneath mottled bioluminescent markings. On their homeworlds, those markings were a language of mood and family. Here, as the children scrambled over slick roots and ducked under thorned vines, their bioluminescence was a liability. It turned them into easy targets. One of them, Kiriin, slipped. He was small even for his age, his dorsal patterns barely a faint constellation across his back. He caught himself on a root, claws scraping, heart hammering. His skin flashed bright green with fear. For a moment he stayed still, forcing his markings to dim, clenching his jaw until the glow shrank. He thought of Elder Elosah's last instructions, whispered in the holding pens hours before the guards released them into the reserve. "Stay low. Do not trust the trees. Listen for the drones. Always move when they are far, never when they are near. And whatever happens, Kiriin, you keep running until your legs will not, because on the far side of this forest, there is a ship that may yet be ours." Kiriin did not know if that last part was true. The elder's voice had trembled when he said it, and Silari elders did not tremble. But even a false hope was better than none. "Up," hissed one of the older children, a girl whose name Kiriin did not know. "Move, you will mark us all." "I am moving," he whispered back. He pushed himself forward. Branches snagged at the tattered cloth around his shoulders, once a ceremonial vest, now a dirty rag. His feet were raw. Somewhere behind them, further back in the reserve, other Silari ran as well. Adults, decoys, people who had volunteered to be obvious so that the children might reach the far edge. Higher above, unseen by Kiriin, a drone adjusted its course. It locked onto the faint residual glow he had left against the moss. Vesgarden watched the pathing markers light up on the tactical overlay. "There," he murmured, "little sparks." He gestured, and his crew brought his skimmer lower, hovering above the tree line. He could already hear his viewers reacting. He did not have to look at the chat stream to know the balance of comments. There would be those who called the new law barbaric, who invoked old codes, old treaties, but they would watch. They were watching now. Outrage was just another flavor of engagement, and engagement was currency. "Bring up their files," Besk said. His first officer complied. The data was incomplete. Refugees rarely arrived with their names intact. The system displayed generic labels. Child A, Child B, Child C, approximated age ranges, rough health metrics. Vesk flicked the list away. "They will have names," he said. "They always do. Find out later. For now, they are game." On the forest floor, Kiriin heard something new above the rustling canopy. A low hum, like a distant storm. Drones, closer than before. He bit his tongue until he tasted blood. using the pain to keep his markings dim. He thought he could hear the voice of Elosa somewhere behind them shouting in the Silari Creole, taunting the hunters, offering them a bigger, more obvious target. Kiriin did not look back. He ran. In orbit, beyond all this theater, another ship watched. No drones filmed this one. Its hull was coated in adaptive polymers that bent light and shed sensor pings like water. It had no transponder, no identifying markings, and no broadcast feed. Within it, a human woman sat in a narrow operations chair, eyes closed, hands hovering over a bank of holographic controls. Dr. Lian Okafor had never set foot on a Silari world before the invasions. She had learned their songs and scripts through fieldwork on overcrowded stations and refugee barges. She had delivered Silari children in cramped triage bays and watched them die when medicines arrived too late. Now she watched the ghostly outline of the forest reserve projected in front of her. "Target enclaves confirmed," said a clinical voice from the ceiling speakers. 5 minors in the primary thicket, 3 minors and 2 adults in the eastern ravine, multiple adult signals stationary in the southern basin. Enemy hunter squads inbound from north and west. "Any sign of Elder Elosa?" Lian asked. "Signal congruence at 61% in the southern basin cluster," the voice replied. "Movement pattern matches previous recordings with 88% confidence." Lian exhaled slowly. "He is drawing them himself." "Correct," the voice said. "Projected casualty rate for that cluster exceeds 90% within 20 minutes if intervention window is missed." Lian clenched her jaw. She knew the numbers were not emotional. Kiriin 3 did not do emotion. The AI's projections were as clean as the vacuum outside. "Remind me of station law," she said. "Under current Concord enforcement policy," Kiriin 3 recited, "this hunt is a domestic matter within Charn Dominion jurisdiction. Interdiction by foreign military forces constitutes aggression subject to retaliatory action and sanctions. And if a non-military vessel were to suffer a technical malfunction and descend into Charn atmosphere?" Lian asked. "A tragic accident," Kiriin answered. "Difficult to prove otherwise. However, any extraction of designated biomass could still be interpreted as theft." Lian's lips quirked. "We are well past worrying about what they call it." She touched a control. Across the compartment, a row of human operators straightened, watching her. "On my mark," she said. "We drop a shadow." Beneath the vessel, panels irised open, exposing a shuttle that was almost too small to be called a ship. It had no weapons, only thrusters, and a hold configured for living bodies. The hold was mostly empty. Lian thought of the faces that would remain on the forest floor when this was over. "Mark," she said. The shuttle detached, falling fast and silent toward the reserve. Above, Vesk Arden felt the tremor of an atmospheric disturbance ripple across his ship's hull. He glanced up, then at his tactical display. For half a heartbeat, a blip appeared on the edge of his sensors, then vanished. "What was that?" he asked. "Transient anomaly," his sensor officer said. "Gravitic wake, decaying. No transponder." Vesk's mandibles tightened. He rotated a display overlaying Dominion patrol routes. "Anything on the outer net?" he said. "Negative weight. One of the patrol corvettes has deviated from its route. Probably investigating. We have priority clearance. They will not interfere." "They had better not," Vesk said. "Today is historic." He turned his attention back to the forest feed, just as Kiriin and the other children broke through a dense tangle of ferns into a clearer stretch of ground. The drone camera swooped closer. Kiriin felt the wash of air from its contragrav ring. He looked up. For a moment his eyes met the lens. He did not understand that behind that lens millions watched. He only knew that the machine meant death. He bolted. The others scattered with him, radiant fear flashing across their skins despite their efforts to dim it. For the watching audience, the effect was beautiful, streaks of green and blue and white sliding between the shadows like living comets. "Excellent," Vesk murmured. "Pursuit pattern 2. Let them run, then flank them toward the basin." In the southern basin, Elder Elosa stood waist-deep in a pool, his crest lowered, his bioluminescent patterns fully lit. He made no effort to hide. His glow painted the trunks around him in shades of indigo and gold. He sang. The song was old, older than any treaty, older than the Concord, older even than the Charn Dominion's founding. It was a song of calling, a song Silari elders used to bring children in from the tides. He knew the drones would pick up the sound. He knew the hunters would come. He hoped they would. In orbit, Lian monitored both clusters. "Kiriin," she said, "give me the fastest path from the miners to our rendezvous without crossing the heaviest hunter traffic. Under current conditions," Kiriin 3 replied. No such path exists. Optimal recommendation. Divert enemy pursuit toward adult cluster in southern basin, then extract miners during resultant window. That is already happening, Lian said softly. Yes, Kiriin 3 agreed. Probability this behavior is intentional by Elder Elosa surpasses 93%. He is aware of the trade he is making. Lian swallowed. She could almost hear Elo's voice, calm and wry, from the last time they had spoken on a rusted barge near human space. If there is a chance that some of our little ones may live, he had said, then my age has meaning. Do not dishonor that by hesitating. Then we will not, she said. Signal the shuttle. Prepare insertion coordinates near the reserve boundary. Location marked Gamma 3. Confirmed, Kiriin 3 said. The shuttle knifed through ragged clouds, skimming treetops as it decelerated. Its hull glowed faintly with re-entry heat. No Dominion system was watching for such a slight ghost this deep inside their own reserve. No one expected intrusion here. Inside the forest, Kiriin's group crashed through a final line of brush and saw open ground beyond. Open ground, and past it, a sheer wall of shimmering energy that rose from the soil into the sky. The boundary field. One of the older children cried out and ran forward, striking the barrier with both hands. Light flared, throwing him backward. The smell of ionized air burned Kiriin's nostrils. There is no way through, the girl gasped. We are trapped. A roar filled the clearing. Not the hum of drones, not the shriek of Charn engines. A different sound, lower and rougher. The children threw their arms over their faces as hot wind slammed into them. Out of the sky, barely controlled, the human shuttle plunged, retro thrusters firing at the last instant. It hit the ground hard enough to crack the surface, sliding in a hail of dirt and shattered vegetation, coming to a stop 10 meters from the children, nose almost touching the boundary field. Its hatch blew open. A human in a pressure suit leaned out, shouting in accented trade speech, "Inside, now!" For a heartbeat, no one moved. Kiriin stared. He had seen humans at a distance before on refugee docks, but never this close. Their faces were smooth and oddly expressive. This one's eyes were wide, their teeth bared, not in aggression but in urgency. Something in Kiriin's memory stirred. Elder Elosa, explaining translators and allies, these are not Charn. They bleed differently, but they bleed for us. Kiriin ran. The others followed, stumbling into the shuttle's cramped hold. Hands reached out, pulling them in. One child hesitated on the threshold, looking back toward the thicker forest, toward the faint echoes of Elo's song. The human in the hatch did not wait. He hauled the child inside and slapped the control. The hatch sealed. The shuttle lifted just as the first hunter squad broke through the trees on the far side of the clearing. Vesgarden's feed caught a fleeting glimpse of the shuttle's tail as it rose. He froze the image, enhancing it. "Human!" he hissed. The viewers saw the same blink of strange metal, then the scene cut too quickly, as Dominion sensors tried to suppress the frame. But it was too late. Millions had seen it. Clips began to replicate across private networks before the official stream could catch up. Vesk's crest flushed a deep red, the Charn equivalent of fury. "Alert Prefect Malak," he said. "We have trespassers." As the shuttle climbed, Kiriin huddled on the shock-padded floor, arms wrapped around his knees. His skin flickered with unsteady colors. The human pilot, even through their helmet, could see his terror. They toggled a channel. "Bridge," they said. "Package received. 5 miners secured." On the covert ship above, Lian sagged back in her chair. "Bring them home," she said. "Kiriin, detach from orbit and prep for jump sequence as soon as the shuttle docks." "Dominion patrol craft?" 2 corvettes inbound, Kiriin 3 said. "They have shifted to pursuit vectors. Weapon systems warming. Time to intercept? 7 minutes, 18 seconds. "Too fast," Lian whispered. "We will not clear the well before they get a shot." "Correct," Kiriin 3 said. On the tactical dome, lines of probability spread outward like spider silk. Most ended in damage, destruction, or capture. Lian stared at them, then at a faint distant signal in the southern basin on the planet's surface. Elder Elosa was still alive. His song pulsed on their audio feeds, weaker now, interrupted by bursts of static and weapons discharges. There was no shuttle for him. He had known that. "Kiriin," Lian said quietly, "open a secure channel to Fleet Command. Priority to Admiral Tarek Duval." "Channel open," KRE-3 said. "Admiral Duval is en route from the Crown of Orionis. Transit lag 3 minutes, 30 seconds. No live voice, but we can forward tactical and audio. Do it, Lian said. Send him everything. And mark this for classification as evidence. The Concord will not be able to say they did not know. In human space, far from the reserve, vessels moved along trade lanes and patrol routes, unaware for the moment of the drama unfolding in one tiny forest. That would not last. The first pirated clips of the hunt, including the shuttle's appearance, reached the edge nodes of the Crown of Oriones within an hour. From there, they propagated along news feeds and rumor channels, each re-upload adding more commentary, more outrage. In a cramped press bay on the station, Reiko 10 watched a grainy replay of Kiriin's terrified face as the drone swooped over him. She was not broadcasting live, not yet. Her hands shook as she paused and replayed the moment when the shuttle appeared, cutting across the drone's view. She could almost see the calculus in that instant. Whoever had sent that craft had decided that saving 5 children was worth provoking an empire. Reiko had made a career out of walking along the lines where laws blurred. She had embedded with pirates and border militias. She had watched smaller species vanish under the boots of larger ones, then seen the Concord issue measured statements about unfortunate escalations and regional disputes. This was different. She knew it as soon as she saw the hunt edicts, the legal language that reduced minors to unallocated biomass, available for controlled removal. The Dominion had not even bothered to hide behind euphemism. She needed a frame, a narrative that would cut through the usual numbness, a title that would not let people look away, even if it was only true in part. She stared at the cursor blinking above the footage in her editor. They legalized hunting refugee children. Humans put a price on hunters. The words looked outrageous, almost unbelievable. That was the point. She knew some would click just to tell her she had gone too far. Reiko leaned back in her chair. Outside her tiny window, the Crown rotated lazily, its ring of light segmented by docking bays and blistered domes. "Is it too much?" she asked aloud. To no one. In her mind, she heard the half-mocking voice of a senior editor she had once worked for. "They are hunting kids, Reiko. The only too much is not running it at all." She confirmed the title, tagged the piece as long-form, and began to assemble the story. She would need interviews, context. She would need someone who could speak for the Silari who had been hunted, not just for herself. She sent a priority request to Dr. Lian Okafor, care of whatever covert channel the xenologist currently occupied. Lian received the ping as her ship finally punched into superluminal transit, leaving angry Charn corvettes behind with their drives overtaxed by a reckless evasive burn. Kiriin and the other children slept, heavily drugged, their bodies slowly adjusting to the change in environment. Lian stood in the dim medbay, one hand resting lightly on the railing of Kiriin's bunk. His dorsal markings flickered faintly in dream. Carrie tracked the incoming request in her peripheral vision. "Reiko Tan," the AI said. "Independent journalist, currently registered on the Crown of Oriones. She is requesting comment on the incident." Lian knew Reiko by reputation. Sharp, relentless, sometimes reckless. "Not now," Lian said. "Your last directive was to transmit evidence, Kiriin," 3 reminded her. "Her channel reaches a wide audience." "I know," Lian said. "Cue a callback. I will speak when these children wake. Their faces cannot be nothing more than footage." "Understood," Kiriin 3 said. In human political space, the first reports began to ripple across feeds. On a crowded plaza dome in New Dakar Station, a live broadcast from the Concord chamber flickered above a market, ignored by most. Envoy Nadia Kovacs stood at her assigned lectern, listening to a Charn representative drone on about internal jurisprudence. Nadia's hair was pulled back in a severe knot, her posture precise. Only someone who knew her well would see the tension in her jaw, the way her fingers tightened around the small interface slate in front of her. She had already seen the raw footage of the hunt. The envoys had access to intercepted feeds long before the public did. The Charn representative's voice oozed a polished contempt. "Our cultural practices," he was saying, "are not subject to external veto. The individuals in question are not citizens of any recognized polity. They are remnants of non-viable civilizations. Our law grants us the right to manage such populations as we see fit." He paused, letting the translation cycles catch up. Nadia's reply was already written in her mind, but she waited for the formal cue. The presiding Concord moderator, a tall being from a low-gravity world who swayed slightly in the chamber's air, turned toward her. "Envoy Kovacs," the moderator said, "you have requested an emergency response. We recognize your motion. Clarify your objection." Nadia stepped forward. Objection, she said. This is not an objection to what color paint you put on your ships. You have legalized the hunting of children. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Some of the envoys shifted uncomfortably. Others stared down at their slates. The individuals in question, the Charn delegate repeated, are not recognized as children under Dominion law. They are under your law, Nadia cut in. By that logic, any empire could redefine whoever they wish as non-people and do as they please. That is precisely what you are doing. The moderator lifted a hand. Envoy Kovacs, procedure. Procedure is what you hide behind when your conscience hurts, Nadia said, then forced herself to breathe, to modulate. She knew how this game worked. Outrage alone did nothing. She needed leverage. Her interface slate vibrated lightly. A secure message had arrived from Admiral Tarek Duval's office. She glanced down, scanning the contents. There was a coded phrase in the middle of the text, one they had agreed upon months ago, half serious, in a bar on the Crown after a long negotiation. When they do something unforgivable, it read, we will not wait. Her pulse steadied. I submit, Nadia said, voice falling into a more controlled cadence, that the Charn Dominion's new edicts violate the foundational accords that allowed the Concord of Orions to exist. If any state can declare whole categories of sentience to be unprotected stock, then none of our agreements mean anything. I am placing a formal motion on the docket, immediate sanctions and arms restrictions against the Dominion until these edicts are rescinded. The chamber buzzed louder now. Sanctions were not lightly threatened, especially against a power as entrenched as the Charn. The moderator glanced at the countdown timers on several envoys' pods. We will schedule debate and a vote in the next cycle, they said carefully. Given the gravity of the proposal, it must be weighed with great care. The Charn delegate's crest fluttered in amusement. We look forward to the Concord's thoughtful inaction, he said. Nadia smiled, a small hard curve of lips. She knew how long the next cycle could take. Weeks, months, long enough for dozens more hunts. Her slate buzzed again. This time the message was simple. A set of coordinates, a code name, and an authorization key. Project Wardens, approved. Admiral Tarek Duval stood in the strategic theater aboard the ISS Dauntless, hands clasped behind his back, watching a shifting projection of the Velis expanse. He was a broad-shouldered man in his 50s, face lined more from concentration than age. Years in cramped command chairs and negotiation halls had etched permanence into his features. His eyes were a gray that could look warm or cold depending on the light and the orders he was giving. Around him, officers manned stations, adjusting displays and exchanging low murmurs with distant units. Kiriin-3's primary projection floated above the central table as a faceted orb of light, its voice emanating from the air rather than any single point. The hunt edicts are already being codified into Dominion practice, the AI said. Public opposition within Charn space remains minimal. Outrage is concentrated in external polities, particularly human space and certain Concord-aligned minor species. Tarek nodded. And the Concord? Debating, Kiriin said. They will neither condemn nor condone for now. Their own regulations treat such matters as domestic policy in the absence of a clear, codified crime against. Their term is universal reason. Universal reason, Tarek repeated. Reasonable to whom? No one answered. He had not been expecting them to. Conventional options? He asked. His operations chief, a lean woman with a clipped tone, stepped forward. Option 1, official denunciation and sanctions coordinated with allied states, she said. Slow, likely to be watered down or blocked. Option 2, direct military strikes on hunt sites or Dominion infrastructure. Effective in the short term but would be considered open war. We are not ready for that. She hesitated. Option 3? Tarek prompted. Covert disruption, she said. Sabotage, targeted assassinations, spreading unrest. Plausible deniability but high risk of blowback if traced. Could be done with small teams and proxies. Tarek looked at Kiriin. Show me the flows. The projection changed. Trade routes blossomed like veins across the expanse. Lines of credits and contracts pulsed along them, color-coded by allegiance. Charn culture is transactional, Kiriin said. Their law is built around contracts and responsibility assignments. Even their hunts are structured as paid events, not mere massacres. This creates an exploitable framework. Exploited how? Tarek asked, though he had already begun to guess. Kiriin flickered. By altering the cost-benefit analysis of hunting, the AI said. Currently, participants receive social status and financial profit. Legal protections shield them from most consequences. If a counterforce were to weight the ledger in the opposite direction, counterforce, Tarek said, like us. He had seen mercenary networks operate across the borderlands, had watched the Redwake Ledger grow from a niche pirate tool into a ubiquitous underlayer of galactic commerce. Redwake was anonymous, decentralized, and ruthless. It did not care whose contracts it carried, only that they were honored and paid. Priyanka Deshmukh, dialing in via secure link from a darkened control room planetside, appeared as a smaller hollow near Kiriin 3. Her hair was shorn close for convenience. Several tattoos marked the visible parts of her arms, some purely aesthetic, some functional circuit inks interfacing with the consoles around her. "I have been waiting years for someone in uniform to ask me about Redwake, Admiral," she said. Tarek arched an eyebrow. "You could have mentioned it sooner." "You would not have liked my ideas," she said. "Until now. Convince me." Priyanka brought up her own overlay. The Redwake Ledger interface glowed in translucent layers, contract types, reputation scores, escrow pools. "In a lot of backwaters, Redwake is more real than any government," she said. "If you want a ship escorted, a rival's comms tapped, or a mining platform accidentally destabilized, you post a contract here. The system escrows payment, escrow bots crawl the network to confirm completion, and everyone pretends it is not happening." She zoomed in on a cluster of contracts. "Vesk Arden's recent hunts," she said. "Half his logistics chain runs through Redwake. The same for most of the bigger hunters' fleets. They're insurers, too. They all use private contracts to dodge official oversight." Tarek studied the display. "And you think we can turn this system back on them?" "We do not need to think it," Priyanka said. "We can model it." "Kiriin?" The AI projected graphs and probability clouds. "If a reliable counter-contract framework appears," Kiriin 3 said, "one that pays more to prevent or punish hunts than to enable them, Redwake's own internal algorithms will shift. Mercenary crews respond to profit and risk. If the net profit of aiding hunts becomes negative compared to sabotaging them, behavior will change." Nadia's face appeared next to Priyanka's, called in from the Concord Chamber's secure envoy channel. "And the Concord?" she asked. "They have already declared this an internal Charn matter," Priyanka said. "If the Dominion says hiring killers is legal, they cannot very well complain when other people hire different killers, especially if no official state actors are involved." "In other words," Nadia said slowly, "we fight their cruelty with their own laws." "Not with their laws," Tarek said. "With their tools." He looked around the theater. "This will not be clean," he said. "We will be unleashing people we cannot fully control. There will be lines crossed." "Lines are already being crossed," Lian's voice said, as she stepped into the projection range, her image flickering in from her ship's narrow comm suite. Tarek turned slightly toward her hollow. She looked tired, her usually composed expression strained. He remembered the first time he had met her, at a briefing about the Silari refugee crisis. She had been the only one in the room who spoke of the refugees as individuals with names, not as numbers in a camp registry. "You have seen them up close," Tarek said. "You think this is the right path." "No path is right," Lian said. "But we know this. Asking the Concord to solve it will mean years of speeches while children are hunted. Going in guns blazing would turn those same children into collateral. This uses the only currency the Dominion respects." "And fear," Priyanka said. "Exactly," Lian said. Tarek closed his eyes for a moment. He had grown up on stories of clean wars, strategic strikes on military targets, codes of engagement observed by both sides. Those stories had never been entirely true, but they had shaped him. Now he was being asked to fund bounties. "You realize," he said, "that if this works, we will be normalizing bounty warfare. Any species with enough money could decide that someone else's internal law is abhorrent and start posting prices on heads. The Dominion has already normalized the idea that some people's lives are forfeit," Nadia said. "We are not starting this, Tarek. We are responding. And if we do nothing, we tell everyone watching that this is acceptable." He looked at Kirn. "Project Wardens," he said. "That is what we will call it. Kiriin, record the directive. Establish covert funding streams through the Redwake Ledger. Prioritize bounties on key hunt organizers, fleet captains, and broadcast enablers. Non-lethal capture preferred. Payment bonuses for live testimonies and document caches." "Directive recorded," Keren 3 said. "Sergeant Timo Ragnarsson," Tarek added, turning to a squad leader waiting near the theater's edge. "You and your team will handle the physical side. Insertions, extractions, making sure the right intel falls into the right hands. Timo was tall, his build more solid than sleek, his blonde hair cropped short. A faint scar traced along his jaw, a souvenir from a Black Ops mission gone sideways years ago. "You want us to babysit mercenaries?" Timo asked. "I want you to make sure they understand that the people posting these bounties are not bluffing," Tarek said, "and that if they double-cross us, payment will not save them." Timo grinned without much humor. "Understood." Tarek looked back at the projection of the Velis expanse. "The Charn Dominion legalized hunting refugee children," he said. "So we will put a price on hunters. Let us see how they enjoy living in someone else's crosshairs." Redwake noticed the change within days. At first it was a trickle. Small contracts appeared under new pseudonyms, offering generous sums for verified disruption of specific hunt supply lines, a refueling depot here, an ammo shipment there. The pricing was unusual, higher than standard for the risk involved, with built-in bonuses for non-lethal outcomes. The network's automated risk assessors flagged the pattern, but could not find any violation of Redwake's few simple rules. The contracts were funded, escrowed, and connected to fully collateralized wallets. That was all the system cared about. Then lethality thresholds began to shift. New contracts targeted named individuals, a broadcast executive known for airing hunt feeds, a hunt world governor, a particularly cruel overseer. The contract specified, capture preferred, evidence package required, death only if no other option preserves operational security. For crews used to simple destroy target gigs, the stipulations were strange, but the payouts were irresistible. A small mercenary outfit that usually worked out of the Velis Expanse border took one such contract on a whim. They sabotaged a hunt transport's navigation beacons, causing it to misjump into an inconvenient but not lethal region of space. Dominion response teams scrambled to recover the vessel before its high-profile passengers could complain too loudly. The Merc outfit uploaded their proof, completed handshakes with anonymous intermediaries, and watched their accounts swell with enough credits to buy 3 new ships. Word spread. On a cargo deck in a dusty station, a burly captain laughed as he showed his crew the transaction history. "I am telling you," he said, "there is a new player in town. Someone has decided that there is more money in tormenting the Charn than in working for them." "Who?" a crewman asked. The captain shrugged. "Do not know, do not care. Credits are credits." At the same time, in a quieter corner of the network, Broker Zeal adjusted access keys on a data trunk and accepted a secure incoming connection. Heisel's chitin clicked softly as he flexed his chitasere. To human eyes, the Thrixian would have looked like an oversized bipedal mantis wrapped in a tailored vest of shimmering fibers. To Haziel, humans were awkward sacks of fluids who somehow dominated entire sectors. "Caller," Haziel said, voice buzzing slightly through the translator. "You have piqued my curiosity." On his private channel, a stylized emblem appeared, a simple shield icon overlaid with a child's handprint. "Project Wardens," Priyanka said, her real face ghosted behind the emblem. "We would like to formalize a relationship." "Many would," Zeal said. "Few can afford it. Your recent transactions have been generous. But generosity alone does not guarantee sustainability. We are not trying to buy the galaxy," Priyanka said, "only to adjust one of its uglier habits." Haziel's antenna twitched. "You humans and your habits," he said. "You are very new on the stage, yet you stride as if you built it. This is not criticism, it is an observation." "Observation is why we came to you," Priyanka said. "You see flows, patterns. We need someone who can tell us where to apply the least push for the most disruption." Haziel considered. "Why do you care?" he asked. "There are many atrocities. You do not throw credits at all of them." "Because this one is being done under the color of law," Priyanka said. "Because if nobody pushes back, it will become the template for others. Because we remember being small. And because—" She hesitated, then decided there was no point in lying. "Because our own citizens are outraged enough to fund this. We are not paying alone." "Ah," Zeal said softly. "So the market has already moved within your own species. You are merely amplifying it." He tasted the probabilities. If Project Wardens succeeded, the Charn would face internal economic pain. Some of Haziel's existing clients would suffer, but others, the ones who were tired of being coerced into bowing to Dominion preferences, would welcome a shift. And if the Wardens failed, Zeal could always claim he had been misled. "Very well," he said. "I will work with you, for a fee." Of course, Priyanka said. We are not a charity. Hazel's mandibles parted in what passed, for his species, as a grin. Then let us begin hunting hunters, he said. It is, I admit, a refreshing inversion. Reiko's exposé, once Lian agreed to speak, hit human feeds like a shockwave. The opening shot was not of Tarek, or Nadia, or any human official. It was Kiriin's face, filling the frame, his skin flickering with confusion and fear as he woke in the medbay, eyes widening at the human silhouettes around him. A gentle hand reached into shot, offering him a container of water formulated to match Silari's salinity. The hand belonged to Lian, though Reiko's caption only identified her as human xenologist. Do you know where you are? Lian asked in halting Silari. Kiriin frowned. In a metal den, he said. Above the sky. You are safe, Lian said. The hunters cannot reach you here. He stared at her for a long moment. How many of us did you take? He asked finally. 5, Lian said. You, and 4 others. Kiriin's gaze dropped. There were more of us, he whispered. I know, Lian said. We did not have room. I am sorry, he swallowed. Is Elder Elosa alive? He asked. Lian hesitated just long enough for the camera to catch it. We do not know, she said. And I am not safe, he said quietly. Not yet. Reiko let the silence linger. Then the story widened, showing the hunt edicts, the Concord debates, snippets of Vestgarden boasting in a shallow interview about necessary measures to test our young nobles under real pressure. She cut in footage of Dominion broadcast hosts cooing over the bravery of our hunters and overlaid it with crisp text from the edicts themselves, highlighting phrases like non-person biomass and authorized recreational culling. When she introduced Project Wardens, she did it with a mix of intrigue and bluntness. They legalized hunting refugee children, she said in her recorded narration, voice steady. Humans put a price on hunters. Her sources within Project Wardens remained anonymous, but she named the strategy, using the Redwake Ledger, turning bounties against those who profited from the hunts. She showed anonymized clips of mercenary crews talking about the new contracts. One, his face blurred, said, Look, if some fat aristocrat is paying me to fetch him trophies and some ghost out there is paying triple to make the aristocrat disappear instead, I know which job I am taking. Principle is for people who can afford to starve. The reaction was immediate. On Human Worlds, protests swelled. People flooded donation channels set up by humanitarian groups and, less openly, by cutouts feeding Project Wardens' coffers. Petitions circulated demanding that any corporation trading with the Charn Dominion sever ties. On other species networks, discussion was more cautious. Some were wary of humanity's audacity. Others, especially those with their own histories of exploitation, found themselves quietly cheering. Within the Charn Dominion, official coverage dismissed the story as human propaganda. But in private levels of their networks, some citizens watched the stolen clips with unease. Not all Charn were hunters. Not all had wanted these laws, but dissent had a cost. Prefect Malak watched a recorded segment of Reiko's exposé in his private office, jaw tight. He was not a fool or a sadist in the simple sense. He saw himself as a steward of Dominion stability. To him, the Silari were not children, but destabilizing inflows of population from failed polities, a problem to be managed before they undermined resource allocations. He had recommended the hunts not because he personally enjoyed them, though he did not flinch from hard measures, but because they had offered a dual solution, culling excess stock, as he thought of them, while reinforcing Charn aristocratic cohesion through shared rituals. He had not anticipated the ferocity of the human response. This is an overreach, one of his advisors murmured. We should restrict Redwake access in our sectors, block the Ledger's nodes. Malak ground his teeth. Do you know how much of our logistics runs through those nodes, he said. We cannot simply shut them down, and if we do, others will read it as weakness. No, we cut off a limb where the infection is. We make an example. He turned to a window, looking out over a planet shrouded in the skeletal frames of orbital construction. The Heliox array node nearest the Velis expanse hung in the distance, a web of pylons and antennae around an unfinished core. Accelerate Heliox deployment, Malak said. I want the first node operational by the end of the next quarter. That will strain our yards, another advisor protested. The energy requirements alone, then strain them, Malak snapped. We have let these upstart mammals think they can dictate our internal affairs. A demonstration is necessary. We do not need to annihilate a world. Merely Remind them that their stations and beanstalks are fragile things. He imagined a surgical strike, a human orbital ring, flickering, failing, tumbling. Not total genocide, a line he would not cross, or so he told himself, but a controlled correction. The Concord will not stomach that, his advisor said. They will unite against us. Not if we choose our target with care, Mahalak said. Something deniable, an accident, an equipment failure at a critical moment. And before they can trace it, we will have collected enough leverage to force them to focus on human aggression instead. These bounties, these wardens. He savored the word, rolling it in his mouth like a sour fruit. We will paint them as terrorists, he said, as destabilizers, and we will have the hijacks array to back the story. And on Ankaris Haven, the soil crunched softly under Dr. Lian Okafor's boots as she walked between rows of newly planted seedlings. The world was young in human hands, its atmosphere tuned, its biosphere carefully seeded with plants and microbes from a dozen compatible ecologies. Now, along the banks of a shallow, clear lake, Silari volunteers had been excavating channels and basins to recreate something of their home estuaries. Elder Elosa was not among them. By now, they knew his fate. The last bursts of data from the forest reserve had shown his light winking out in a hail of weapons fire, his song breaking off mid-note. Lian carried that absence with her like an extra weight. Kiriin did not the same way. He carried it like a whole. He stood at the edge of the water, feet submerged, watching small bioluminescent algae swirl around his toes. The settlement's engineers had adapted them from genetic samples Elo had saved before fleeing his world. They look almost right, Kiriin said. Almost, Lian agreed. What are they missing? Their color is wrong when the twin moons rise, Kiriin said, then caught himself. We do not have twin moons here. I keep forgetting. He looked up at the sky. Only one pale disk hung there, faint in the planetary afternoon. Do you like it? Lian asked. Kiriin's skin glowed a complicated pattern that Lian had not fully learned to read yet. I like being alive, he said. I do not like that some are not. I do not like that there are people out there who count us like numbers. You are not numbers, Lian said. I know I am not, Kiriin said. They do not. He hesitated. Are you going to hunt them? He asked. Lian blinked. What? The ones who hunted us, Kiriin said. The ones who made the law. Elder Elosa said you humans do not just talk, he said. When you decide something is wrong, sometimes you break things. Are you going to break them? Lian thought of Tarek on the Dauntless, of Priyanka and Zeal plotting through the Redwake Ledger, of Timo and his team running simulations of infiltration routes to Helioc's construction sites. Yes, she said eventually. In our way. Good, Kiriin said. Then maybe I can sleep. He stepped deeper into the water, letting it lap at his knees. Later in the evening, as artificial lights warmed above the settlement and human and Silari voices mingled over shared meals, a priority alert came through to Lian's comm implant. Project Wardens had confirmation, the first major mercenary defection. A medium-sized hunting support fleet, hired to patrol the outskirts of a hunt world, had taken a Warden's contract to quietly escort a refugee convoy instead, disabling their own transponders for a few crucial hours. The Charn saw only that the convoy had slipped away. They blamed incompetence, not treachery. For now, the balance was shifting. It did not shift quietly for long. On a Dominion Pleasure Channel, a scheduled live broadcast featuring Vesk Arden was hijacked for 17 seconds before security regained control. Viewers saw Vesk's familiar crest and decorated armor. They heard the usual introductory beats, and the feed cut. In its place, grainy footage filled the screen. Silari stumbling through the forest, Kiriin's face as the drone swooped down, Elder Elosa singing, the last sparks of his light. A simple overlay appeared in human and Charn trade languages alike. Price, 10 million credits for verified capture of Vesk Arden. Alive. Evidence of his complicity in hunt edicts required. Delivery coordinates attached. By the time Dominion technicians restored the broadcast, the message had already been scraped, mirrored, and spread through Redwake. At first, Vesk laughed. The nerve, he said to his entourage, watching a replay in his private cabin. They think they can put a number on me? But the laughter did not quite reach his eyes. He had lived his whole life being the hunter. The idea of being prey did not sit easily in his bones, even if he told himself it was absurd. It became less absurd when an escort frigate and his flotilla failed to respond to repeated hails. When he sent a shuttle to investigate, it found the frigate drifting, its crew unconscious, knocked out by a carefully tuned gas. On the bridge, sprayed on the bulkhead in some crude phosphor, was a symbol Vesk had never seen before, a shield and a handprint. Redwake confirmed, discreetly, that an anonymous contract for a non-lethal warning to Vesk Garden had been completed and paid out. Someone had used his own hunting retinue to send him a message. For the first time, Vesk requested additional security. Not because he was afraid, he told his staff, but because the politics of the situation demanded a show of strength. Project Wardens took note. So did Heel. The economic tipping point approaches, the Thrixian told Priyanka in one of their encoded exchanges. Insurance underwriters are whispering. They cannot quantify the risk anymore. Profits shrivel when you cannot price risk. Good, Priyanka said. Let them whisper louder. Heliac Strategens, sensing a coming storm, leaned into their own calculus. The corporation had no ideology beyond profit. It manufactured advanced energy platforms and sold them to the highest bidder. If that buyer wanted to use them to discourage destabilizing actors, as their brochures put it, that was not Heliac Strategens' concern. Their lead architects presented Malak with a revised deployment schedule. We can bring 3 nodes online sooner if we divert materials from civilian grid projects, one said. There will be blackouts in some border systems, but nothing catastrophic. Mahlak nodded. Blackouts we can spin, he said. Terror, less so. The shadow mammals must understand that their little game has consequences. He pointed to a map of Concord in human space. We will not strike central worlds, he said. We will choose something like... His finger hovered over the crown of Oriones, then shifted, hovering over Ankaris Haven's modest icon. A sanctuary, he mused. If a sabotage event there disrupts their precious refugee project, perhaps they will realize how fragile their kindness is. He imagined news feeds of burning habitats, collapsed domes, floating bodies. He smiled thinly. We will call it a technical mishap, he said. And before anyone can prove otherwise, we will leak evidence of human-led terror contracts. Project Wardens may yet be our greatest propaganda gift. Back on the ISS Dauntless, Kiriin 3 compiled chatter from Redwake, Dominion subnets, and Concord rumor mills. The AI's models converged on an alarming probability. Increased Heliox activity, Kiriin 3 said, addressing Tarek and his senior staff. Construction rates have tripled at the primary Velis Expanse node. Intercepted corporate communications from Heliac Strategens indicate planned demonstration within the next 100 days. Target? Tarek asked. Unknown, Kiriin 3 said. But references to symbolic softness and sanctuary illusions recur. Ankaris Haven, Lian said, patched in from the planet's modest operations center. It is a likely candidate, Kiriin 3 said. Then they are not just hunting children anymore, Tarek said. They are hunting anyone who helps them. He paced along the edge of the strategic table. We cannot let the Heliox array come fully online, he said. Once it does, they will have a whip over every orbital we own. Option? Timo asked, stepping into the circle. His team's armor harness marked him as ground kill, the sort of person who was dropped where everyone else was pulled out. We hit the node, Tarek said. Before it is complete, we turn their unveiling into their humiliation. Priyanka frowned. Destroy it? She asked. That will confirm their narrative. They will say, look, the humans are terrorists, blowing up civilian infrastructure. Not destroy, Kiriin 3 said. Redirect. The orb's facets flickered, reshaping into a schematic of the Heliox node. If we can infiltrate the control nexus, the AI said, we can hijack its communication arrays, use its own broadcast capability to project Warden's data into every corner of Dominion space. Tarek's eyes sharpened. Turn their weapon into a mirror, he said. Show them themselves. And while everyone is staring at the mirror, Priyanka added, we dump a full slate of bounties onto Redwake. Every Hun official, every Helioc administrator, every aristocrat who bought a ticket to a cull. No more plausible deniability. No more sheltered distance. That will create chaos, Nadia said, patched in from the Concord chamber. The Concord will be forced to take a position. Good, Tarek said. They have been avoiding one long enough. Timo rolled his shoulders. So we sneak onto the most heavily guarded construction platform in the region, past Charn security and Heliox engineers, plug in an AI and hope no one notices until the whole system is turned inside out, he said. Is that the plan? In broad strokes, Kiriin 3 said. Timo grinned. Then I suppose we had better start rehearsing. Operation Broken Antler, as they named it, unfolded in stages. First, Priyanka and Heel seeded Redwake with preliminary contracts designed to muddy the waters around the Heliox node. Requests for routine equipment inspections, crew morale entertainment deliveries, and specialty alloy shipments appeared, funded by shell entities that traced back to innocuous sectors. Some of these contracts were real. Timo's team rode into the node's periphery disguised as maintenance workers, their gear hidden among crates of replacement parts. Once aboard, they began mapping the platform's internal security rhythms, patrol routes, sensor blind spots, reaction times. Carry 3, connected through an encrypted tight beam from the Dauntless waiting at the edge of detection range, built a dynamic model of the platform's response capacity. On the scheduled day of the Heliox node's unveiling, Prefect Malak arrived in a gleaming command shuttle, flanked by smaller escorts. Bess Garden was already on board, of course. The event would be broadcast to select Dominion elites, a reminder that while some might question the hunts, the hunters remained at the Empire's heart. As Malak disembarked onto the ceremonial deck, his entourage flanking him, he adjusted the set of his cloak and smoothed his crest. "Today," he said in his prepared remarks to his own staff, "we show the galaxy that the Dominion does not flinch. We will not be shamed by upstart moralists. We set our own standards." He believed that. He also believed, deep down, underneath the polished rhetoric, that power was the only real standard. Whoever could enforce their will without consequence defined morality. Today, power wore the shape of the Heliox array. The ceremonial deck was a marvel of polished alloys and shimmering hollow screens, built not because the node required it, but because Malak wanted something suitably grand. Through the transparent dome overhead, the curve of the unfinished array loomed like a crown of metal teeth. Vesk stood at a podium, ready to feed lines to his adoring audience. "My friends," he began, projecting his voice through internal channels, "much has been said about our recent renewal hunts. Soft-hearted voices from lesser polities have wailed that we are cruel, yet these same voices set bounties on our heads, turning the chaos of the frontier against us." He paused, waiting for the murmur, the growl of agreement. "Today," he said, "we show them what real force looks like." Today, halfway through his sentence, Timo's team made their move. Deep in the node's spine, in a control bay filled with Heliox technicians hunched over consoles, a maintenance worker dropped a crate and swore loudly. The nearest technician turned. "Watch it," he snapped. "Those conduits are—" Timo moved faster than most chests could rise in anger. He hit the man with a non-lethal charge, dropping him where he stood, and spun, firing 2 more shots at technicians reaching for alarms. His team flowed around him. They did not kill unless absolutely necessary. They had learned that, from Warden's doctrine, dead bodies panic guards faster than unconscious ones. Security alarms began to blare anyway. Timo cursed under his breath. There was no way to run an operation this big without making noise eventually. "Kiriin," he said, slamming a cable into the main interface trunk. "You are up." "Connection established," Kiriin 3 said. "Gaining command of communication relays now. Please hold off getting shot for 30 seconds. "Working on it," Timo muttered, hauling a fallen guard into cover. On the ceremonial deck, Malak's ear implant chirped an urgent tone. "Prefect," his security chief said, voice tight, "we have a breach in the core control bay. Unknown hostiles. Partial lockdown in progress." Malak's eyes narrowed. "Where are they from?" he demanded. "Redwake scum? Internal dissidents?" "Unclear," the chief said. "They are using Dominion-issue stun weapons, but their tactics—" A tremor shuddered through the deck. The hollow screens flickered, then went black, then cycled to a stripped-down interface. "Kiriin," Tarek said aboard the Dauntless. "Status? We have partial control," the AI said. "Heliox systems are more paranoid than standard Dominion infrastructure, but their arrogance is my opportunity. They assumed no one would dare touch this. Redirecting external broadcast channels. Now." The screens on the ceremonial deck brightened. Instead of showing the prepared sequence of Dominion flags, Heliox logos, and flattering shots of the array, they showed Kiriin, the same footage Reiko had opened with, the child's terrified face as the drone swooped down. Elder Elosa singing. Silari falling. Audio filled the deck. Malak froze. "Cut it," he snarled. "Shut it off." "We are trying," a technician gasped, fingers flying over manual overrides. "The system is not responding. Something has overridden primary controls." Vesk stared at his own image on the screen as he fired at fleeing figures in the forest. He saw himself from a drone's eye, armor gleaming, voice laughing. He saw himself miss Kiriin by inches, then turn away toward another target. He had never thought of the hunts from that angle. He had always seen them from his own perspective. Now, the hunter looked like a monster. For the first time, Vesk wondered how he would appear to someone who did not share his cultural context, his assumptions. To a frightened child, the thought unsettled him. He pushed it down. "This is manipulation," he snapped. "Out of context footage, lies." But the footage kept playing. Other hunts, other children. Financial records scrolled alongside, linking names to accounts to payouts. Across Dominion space, wherever Heliox nodes tied into relay networks, the same broadcast appeared. It jumped to private channels, hijacked advertisement slots, even interrupted a few unrelated entertainment feeds. On the Crown of Oriones, the Concord chamber's main display seized up mid-speech, shifting from a trade negotiation to images of Silari running. Gasps rippled through the hall. Nadia's heart hammered as she watched. This was reckless. Brilliant, but reckless. At the same time, Charon 3 used the Heliox node's transaction backbone to inject a coordinated wave of new contracts into the Redwake Ledger. The Warden's emblem appeared alongside a flood of bounties. 20 million for Prefect Malak, alive with verified confession. 10 million for Vesgarden. Scaled rewards for each member of the Hunt Edict Design Committee. Lesser, but still significant payments for ship captains who had ferried hunts, broadcast executives who had aired them, financiers who had underwritten them. The contracts were backed not only by human funds anymore. Weeks of quiet outreach had found sympathetic donors among other species, small polities who had chafed under Charn arrogance, humanitarian groups, even a few wealthy individuals whose conscience had finally outweighed their fear. Redwake's algorithm, seeing the biggest, most fully funded cluster of contracts in its history, did what they always did. They prioritized. Some mercenary crews, watching their feeds and dives in dockside bars, blinked at the numbers, then at each other. "That has to be fake," one muttered. Another ran a manual escrow verification. "It is real," she said slowly. "And it is live." On the Heliox node, the sound of distant weapons fire grew louder in Timo's ears. "Status?" he asked, checking his team's positions. 2 of his people were down, armor scorched where Dominion rounds had gotten through. They were alive, but out of the fight. "External broadcast complete," Corella 3 said. "Data exfiltration underway. We are well past the point of subtlety now, Sergeant." "Yeah, I noticed," Timo said. The door to the control bay blew inward. Charn soldiers poured in. Crests flared, weapons raised. Timo ducked behind a console as shots cracked past. "You have what you need?" he shouted. "Yes," Kiriin 3 said. "We can withdraw." "Then pull the plug," Timo said. "And cut their teeth." "Affirmative," the AI said. Across the node, systems flickered. The Heliox array's incomplete core went from a slow, steady hum to a spasmodic flutter. Malak felt the change under his feet. "What is happening?" he demanded. "The array is recalibrating," a Heliox engineer stammered. "If the activation sequence continues in this state, the energy discharge will be unpredictable. We may breach the core." "Shut it down," Malak barked. "We are trying," the engineer said. "Something has locked the main route. Manual override will take at least 5 minutes." "We do not have 5 minutes," Malak snarled. He turned to his security chief. "Get me into that control bay," he said. His chief hesitated. "Prefect, that is not advised." "Now," Mahalak said. As he strode toward the nearest lift, the feed above him continued to show his own face, intercut with line items from budgets he had signed. He kept his crest steady. He could not show fear in front of his subordinates. Inside, something tightened. On the ceremonial deck, Vesgarden glanced at an alert on his personal device. A private message from an old associate in Redwake. Just 4 words. "You are worth more now." He locked his jaw. On Ankaris Haven, Lian stood in the operations center, eyes fixed on a live patchwork feed of the Heliox node broadcast. Kiriin had slipped in behind her, drawn by the murmurs, and now watched from the doorway. He saw his own face again on the screen, larger than life. "Is that me?" he whispered. "Yes," Lian said. "Why?" "Because they must see you," Lian said. "Not as biomass. As someone. You represent all the ones they did not see." Kiriin stepped closer, skin flickering with a storm of colors. "Are we winning?" he asked. Lian did not answer. Aboard the Dauntless, Tarek watched his tactical displays. Dominion ships were converging on the Heliox node. Human assets were on the move as well, some visible, some not. "Karen," he said, "can we extract Timo's team?" Probability of successful retrieval under current conditions is 32%, Kiriin 3 said. If we attempt to pull them out, we will have to bring the Dauntless closer, exposing ourselves to Haliak's backlash if the core goes unstable. Do we have an obligation to try? Tarek asked quietly. There was no doctrine for this. Wardens personnel had gone in knowing the risk, but leaving them felt wrong. Obligation is a human construct, Kiriin 3 said. However, your own history suggests that abandoning your people when you can still affect the outcome tends to corrode trust. Tarek grimaced. Bring us in, he said. Prepare to grab whoever makes it out. Use every decoy we have. In the control bay, Timo heard the change in the hum as Kiriin 3 forced the Helioc's core into a controlled misfire state. What does that mean? One of his team shouted. It means we have lit a fire under them, Timo said. Time to go. He lobbed a smoke canister into the doorway, filling the room with a thick, chaff-laced fog that scrambled targeting sensors. Fall back to X-File Point Sigma, he said. His team moved, half carrying their unconscious comrades, firing short, precise bursts to keep the Charn honest. They did not make it far before another squad cut them off. The Charn officer at its head had his crest painted with elite markings. His eyes narrowed when he saw Timo. You, the officer said in accented trade. You are the ones who dared defile our array. Timo's lips twisted. Defile? He said. You built it on bones. He glanced at a side corridor on his map. One of his teammates, a Silari volunteer named only in their records as Relay 3, had gone that way earlier to rig emergency charges. They had not checked in. Timo, Kiriin 3 said in his ear. If you take Corridor 7, you can reach an outer airlock in 2 minutes. Dominion forces will control it in 3. So we have a minute to spare, Timo said. He threw himself sideways, snapping a shot at a ceiling junction. The overhead lighting blew out, plunging the hall into emergency red. In the confusion, he dove for Corridor 7, shouting for his team to follow. They ran. Behind them, the Helioc's core began to cycle in earnest. Energy built in its heart, funneled along incomplete conduits seeking an outlet. On the ceremonial deck, status lights went from yellow to orange to a furious red. Malak, halfway to the control bay, snarled into his comm. Whoever you are, he said, addressing the unseen intruders and, by extension, the humans behind them, you will pay for this insult. His only answer was static and faintly the echo of Kiriin's recorded voice. Timo and his team burst into an outer access bay. Relay 3 stood by the airlock controls, dorsal patterns dimmed to conserve energy. You took your time, they said, breathless. Blame the host, Timo said. Always slow to say goodbye. He slapped the airlock override. The outer door irised open, revealing the cold black of space and, just beyond, the faint shimmer of a cloaked shuttle homing in on the breach. Go! Timo barked. His team leaped, mag boots engaging as they landed on the shuttle's hull and clamped down. As Timo followed, a sudden blast of concussive force knocked him sideways. He tumbled, shoulders slamming into the airlock ring. He saw, dimly, the source. A Charn soldier, having pursued them, had fired a desperation shot at Relay 3. The Silari staggered, then shoved themselves bodily into the path of the next shot, shielding Timo. Their markings flared, then dimmed. Timo grabbed their arm and hauled them out into the void as the airlock's emergency safeties slammed shut behind them. The shuttle's pilot gunned the thrusters. As they pulled away, the Helioc's node behind them flared with a halo of contained energy, then flickered. Kiriin 3 had not allowed a full core breach. That would have scattered lethal radiation across the system. Instead, the AI had forced a partial discharge through the node's own comm lattice. For a few seconds, every antenna and relay in the structure glowed white-hot, broadcasting Warden's data like a scream into hyperspace. Then the lights went out. The node drifted, emergency systems kicking in, energy from backup lines barely keeping life support stable. On the ceremonial deck, darkness swallowed the gilded trappings. Malak stared around at his stunned staff. In the near distance he could see the faint glow of the crippled core. You have not broken us, he said aloud, though he was no longer sure who he was addressing. You have only provoked us, his implant chimed. A new message from an anonymous source, routed through multiple obfuscating relays. He opened it on reflex. Inside was a simple sentence, in clear Charn. The price of hunting children is that, one day, something hunts you. On Redwake, notifications exploded. Contracts targeting Malak and Vesk and Helioc's executives flipped from pending to fully funded. Crews that had waffled now saw concrete proof that the Wardens could touch even a Helioc's node. Some declined to get involved, unwilling to cross that line. Others saw opportunity. In dockside bars and cramped crew quarters on isolated mining platforms, conversations whispered. Do you think they will really pay? They already have. Did you not watch? And the Dominion? The Dominion is busy putting out fires of its own. Maybe they will not notice us in the smoke. On the crown of Oriones, the Concord could not pretend neutrality anymore. The main chamber had watched the Heliox node's humiliation in real time, their feeds hijacked like everyone else's. Some envoys argued that the Wardens had escalated the conflict too far, that turning weapons into broadcast tools was too dangerous a precedent. Others countered that without such dramatic action, the hunt edicts would have continued unchallenged and unexamined. In the end, the presiding moderator did something rare. They called for an immediate, unscheduled vote. Nadia stood at her lectern, heart pounding, as the chamber's tallies flickered onto the central display. When the final count appeared, it showed something she had barely dared hope for. A majority in favor of a formal condemnation of the Charn hunt edicts as crimes against sentient life, a directive recognizing Ankaris Haven as a protected sanctuary, and, most surprisingly, a resolution affirming that funding bounties specifically targeting organizers of such crimes, while distasteful, did not in itself constitute terrorism. The Concord had, in effect, given tacit legitimacy to Project Wardens. Nadia let out a breath she had not realized she was holding. It was not justice, not yet, but it was movement. In the Charn Dominion's inner councils, panic roiled beneath a veneer of control. Heliox shareholders demanded assurances. Hunt World governors demanded protection. Ordinary citizens, flooded with disturbing images, demanded explanations. Moloch's position weakened. Those who had opposed the hunt edicts from the start saw their chance. They whispered about the costs of continuing, about sanctions, about the risk that other empires would see the Dominion as a pariah. After a series of tense, closed-door sessions, an announcement went out. The hunt edicts were temporarily suspended pending cultural review. A task force would be formed to re-examine the appropriate treatment of non-citizen populations. It was, publicly, a pause. Privately, it was a retreat. On Redwake, Warden's contracts remained active. Vess Garden, now a walking prize, found his circle of trusted associates shrinking. He traveled with doubly augmented security. He slept in different cabins each cycle. He stopped broadcasting live hunts. He told himself it was a tactical repositioning. Deep down, he knew it was fear. One day, in a corridor on a Dominion outpost, a member of his guard detail glanced at a Redwake feed and then at Vesk. His crest flickered with calculation. Vesk saw it. He killed the guard himself preemptively. Word spread. The bounty still stood. On Ankaris Haven, Kiriin planted a glowing seedling in wet soil. Elder Elosah's absence was a constant shadow, but the settlement had grown around that absence. Silari children played along the water's edge, their markings bright. Human children splashed with them, limbs flailing in unfamiliar currents. Lian stood beside a small podium, waiting. Elo's voice echoed in her mind, but another's would speak today. Elo had recorded a message before he died, fused into data by Wardens teams who had harvested every scrap of his communications. The settlement's sound system hummed. The elder's voice flowed over the crowd, translated loosely into human trade speech for those who could not understand his original tongue. We were hunted, he said. We were numbered. Some of us died in forests that were not ours. Some of us died in seas that had forgotten our songs. That is our pain. It is real. It does not vanish because one law is paused or because one weapon is turned aside. Silari around the lake bowed their heads. Humans stood still. But, Elo's voice continued, we were not alone. A small, noisy species from a blue world chose not to look away. They did not have the strength to crush an empire, so they did something stranger. They changed the price of cruelty. Kiriin looked up at Lian. Is that what you did? He asked softly. Change the price? Lian nodded once. It is what we tried to do, she said. Elo's recording went on. Some will say this is dangerous, he said. They are right. Making cruelty expensive does not remove it. It only pushes it into different corners. But it tells the child running through the forest that somewhere, someone is counting them as more than biomass. Someone cares enough to risk their own safety, their own soul, to stand in the way. The recording ended. Silence settled, then slowly broke into overlapping conversations. On the crown of Oriones in a quiet private lounge, Broker Hazel scrolled through updated Redwake metrics. A new permanent category had appeared in the Ledger's taxonomy: crimes against refugees. Under it, subcategories branched by region and scale. Contracts in that category were overwhelmingly funded by human-linked entities, but a growing number bore tags from other species. Hazel tapped one entry at random. A small polity near the Dominion's far border, long bullied by Charn patrols, had posted a modest bounty on a particularly vicious officer. The funds were limited, but the message was clear. Hazel rubbed his cheliceri thoughtfully. Humans, he mused to himself. You do like to export your morality. He did not mean it entirely as a complaint. In a secure wing of the ISS Dauntless, Admiral Tarek Duval stood before a hollow window showing the Velis expanse. Kiriin III's orb hovered nearby. You know this is not over, Tarek said. I can extrapolate, Kiriin III replied. The Dominion may reinstate the hunts later under new names. Other powers may imitate the Wardens' tactics for less admirable causes. The Redwake Ledger will continue to exist. Did we make it worse? Tarek asked quietly. Kiriin III considered. In some ways, the AI said, you have increased the volatility of the system. In others, you have introduced a counterweight where none existed. It is not clear, even to me, whether the net result is better or worse. Human ethics are not reducible to simple optimization. Tarek smiled faintly. That almost sounded like humility, he said. It is a statistical admission of uncertainty, Kiriin III said. If you wish to call that humility, I will not object. Tarek's comm pinged softly. A message from Reiko Tan. She wanted an interview. Another story. A follow-up. He thought of the title of her first one, the words that had echoed across human networks and beyond. They legalized hunting. Refugee children. Humans put a price on hunters, he sighed. Tell her I will talk, he said. But only if she also talks to Lian and Kiriin and Nadia. This was not my story alone. Kiriin III's orb dimmed slightly. Transmission queued, it said. On Ankaris Haven, as dusk settled and twin artificial moons, orbital mirrors, rose slowly to mimic the Silari sky Kiriin remembered, the boy lay on a patch of soft moss and watched the first stars appear. He thought of the forest, of the sound of the shuttle, of Elder Elosa's voice. He knew there were still hunters out there. Some would never pay for what they had done. Some would die quietly, rich and unrepentant. But he also knew this. Once, someone had looked at his life and decided it was worth a ship, a pilot, an AI's calculations, a xenologist's courage, an admiral's risk. Someone had put a price on the head of the man who had chased him. It did not make the past less painful. It did make the future feel slightly less empty. He closed his eyes. For the first time since the forest, he slept without jolting awake at every distant hum. In the void between stars, ships moved, contracts flowed, laws bent and sometimes broke. Humanity, still small compared to the ancient empires, had nevertheless drawn a line. Whether the galaxy crossed it or learned to walk along it remained to be seen.